Acción. Tras las cámaras, donde la magia del cine se convierte en realidad.
Señales es un thriller de ciencia ficción escrita y dirigida por Night Shyamalan y protagonizada por Mel Gibson y Joaquín Phoenix. El rodaje comenzó en septiembre del año 2001 y la mayoría de las locaciones pertenecen a Pensilvania, Estados Unidos. La película se estrenó comercialmente en agosto del año 2002, con un costo de $9 millones, pero recaudó $408 millones. Les propongo entonces acercarnos tras las cámaras de Señales.
First of all, I feel like the goal process as a filmmaker for me is to have an idea and then spend 2 years executing that idea. And so, as I'm in post-production on one movie, I start thinking, ideas start coming for the next movie. And they've now become a very complicated process. Before it used to be, oh, I got a good idea, I'm just going to write that. Then it became, well, I have a couple good ideas, which one can I inject meaning into? So then that was a different level. And now there's like 8 levels to my decision making. So an idea has to have all these characteristics, that it can have meaning, that it can have suspense, that it can have emotion, the humanity, and that it has a global significance, and that it has a universal message that people in India and Japan and Philadelphia, that everybody can relate to it, that I'm touching on some connection between people, and that it feel like a great roller coaster ride all the same. An idea that can hold all that without bending it too far takes a while to come up with, and so finally this idea came. And it bent to all those things so easily. And also, I'm really looking for clean stories, not something too complicated. It needs to feel like one movie to me. So like this movie is all in a farm, all one family in one place. And so when you leave it, you'll know what it felt like to be on this farm and be with this family during this very kind of horrific time.
Another layer that Knight likes to incorporate into his stories are real-life occurrences. He bases a lot of his background and character information on things that have happened in real life.
Knight's original big concept, and where the title signs came from, is the whole notion of the crop circles. Now, there are a number of people who remember this from the early 80s, where there were a lot of these signs showing up in various parts of the world, mostly in fields of wheat. And there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not it was actually something that was being done by pranksters and wasn't real, or in fact it was a sign from outer space. And Knight chose to do these signs in cornfields because for anyone who's ever grabbed a stalk of corn, you realize it's extremely difficult to bend, let alone flatten 300-400 yards of cornfields. So the fact that these signs appear in cornfields definitely means that they are most likely not man-made.
Crop circles are something that's always been of interest to me. The beauty and the grandeur of them. Just the mystique that no one's taking credit for them. They've happened all around the world. A lot of publicized ones in England, plenty of them in the United States. I think there's 600 in India, so it's a kind of a phenomenon that people have caught on to, and it's always been something that's intrigued me as a subject. And that's the kind of the platform for the movie that it springs from, the crop circles. But it started there with that fascination about that supernatural event. I definitely feel akin to older filmmaking than today's filmmaking, where rather than showing the killer coming with the bloody knife, I would hear a noise and the lights would be on the room, or it would be something in the room that's still moving, and you show that and then the victim realizes there's someone in the room. Oh, that's scarier, the realization in the mind of what's coming, rather than cutting to the guy with the bloody knife, which means don't worry about what scares you, this is what we think scares you. And that's usually 99% of the time very limiting. So if you can give the audience a way to relate, then they'll feel so much more, because they'll be imagining what it felt like to go through this supernatural journey. This movie needed to have a journey other than the physical one that's happening. And Tak Fujimoto and I, we talk about the movie as a metaphor, as a conversation between God and this one man. So with regard to the title, Signs, it definitely has two meanings. One is the crop signs that they find in their yard, but it's also talking about the faith and the existence of signs from above in a kind of a heavenly manner. And the main character, played by Mel Gibson, is a man who's lost faith, who's actually in search of signs that there's somebody out there watching over them. I'd make the movie visually way before we make the movie. It's really an important thing for me, you know, maybe because I'm a control freak, I don't know, but it's a feeling of, I know I got the movie. I understand its nature, I understand where to go, and so when we get on the set, I know where I'm going to use it, and so we don't have to do any extra stuff. We open the movie on this is basically our icon shot of the movie. A shot, you know, looking down in the backyard. Ideally, you see, you know, a taste of the crops at the top of the frame, and you get a real sense that you like this family from what you see.
His scripts are very visual. They read very visually, which is not always the case. Some scripts, I think, and some directors are more verbal, but Knight's very visual. Well, he's actually both, you know, being the writer and, you know, and director. We'll start on page 1, scene 1, and usually he has some ideas that he's already thought about. So we discuss the scene a lot, exactly what kind of feelings he wants to evoke and the emotions of the characters and what the scene is about. And then often I'll do a lot of kind of real quick thumbnail sketches right on the spot. And we actually do 3 passes, really. And we'll do an initial, totally conceptual pass, often before the designer's even been brought in. So then once the sets are built and we have locations, we'll do another pass usually and kind of adjust the sketches for this new information. And then we usually take a 3rd pass, sometimes after he's already done some rehearsing with actors, and he really uses the process well. So it's the first chance to turn the, you know, the script into pictures.
As a producer, selfishly, you got this blueprint. You have a script, and you have visual pictures that represent the script. So it means that you can precisely plan what you need for the movie in terms of sets and locations and props and wardrobe. So there's little room for kind of error, and there's little room for waste. So it's a wonderful process.
We're in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, looking at the set, which is owned by Agricultural College, and they've let us use all their property here to grow corn, as you can see over here, and build our house.
One of the most important things for this movie, and I think for all of Knight's movies, is the look of the movie. It's very controlled for reasons that contribute to the storytelling of the movie. And Larry Fulton was challenged with the task of finding a place where all of the things that Knight had written in the script could be realized on a location, on a real location, because Knight wanted to do this on a real location. And obviously with all of this corn and everything here, we had to do it in a real place. So we sent the location scouts out to look for 40 or 50 acres of land where we could grow corn at a certain time, and it could be ready at a certain time, and we could make corn circles, and we could also have a wonderful landscape and sort of horizon line. There are a lot of elements that had to figure into this. The other thing that was fabulous about this location is we're on Delaware Valley College, which is an agricultural college, so they knew how to grow corn.
So they're just going to plant corn from here all the way to the tree.
Right now that is corn down there.
Where that big circular field.
Right, that's all in corn.
Okay.
It's a little bit behind that corn.
Okay.
So we'll have kind of that height of corn, then we'll have this kind of corn.
Right.
We did grow this corn out here on purpose at a certain time, and we had to start shooting at a certain time. It's also kind of interesting that we tried a new watering technique. I think we used reclaimed water, and the corn grew so well that the college wants to now examine and see what we did so that they can make it part of their agricultural program.
The most difficult thing is the fact that it takes place almost single-handedly, completely inside and outside the farmhouse. So the idea that this house had to be a very big part of this movie.
The farm is the backbone in terms of the set structure of the movie. So we built our farm exteriors right in the middle of this cornfield. We did a few interior scenes on location that show that you are really at the farm, and then we built some wonderful stage sets. And then the sets transcended that whole look and design in terms of color and use of backings, and obviously tech Fujimoto's, lighting design and cinematography.
There's a lot of religious iconography in the film. Graham's character has lost his faith, and one of the opening shots of the movie has just the shadow of a cross on a bedroom wall. The metaphor for me was to say that a man may decide that he's lost his faith, but his faith is always going to be around him. There's like all kinds of icons of faith and belief and religion tucked away in the house for people to find. There's lots of signs around.
Looks a little like our house, doesn't it? Is it possible that there are no coincidences?
Videoclub M&M. Copias originales en DVD y Blu-ray. Todos los géneros. Amplio catálogo en VHS. Insumos de computación y accesorios de video. Servicio de desgrabación de audio. Vicente López, 2983, Villa Ballester. Teléfono 4738-2041.
Technically, in chronological order, the first scene that happened in the characters' lives is the first scene that we shot, the mother dying. That happened 6 months ago. But the movie actually starts with Mel waking up and suddenly having this bad feeling about something. And you get introduced one by one to the characters along the way.
Where are they?
And so it was one of those classic James Bond beginnings, an action sequence. Get everybody's blood pumping and then start the movie.
He understands the language of film. And not only that, he really loves what he does, so that he transmits that and he really wants to talk about it. He has a very good understanding of how he wants to see the story and what he wants to extract from it, technically on film and from performance. I mean, those are things you talk about on the spot. He doesn't settle for the usual kind of, oh, that was good enough.
Oh, let's go. What's that? Who was that for? Let's go.
What's for you?
And he'll even say, well, that was good, but like, hey, I want something else. I want something more. I want something.
If I had made this movie 2 years ago, I think I would have done the wrong thing. Because the way it popped into my head was, we'll stay in a house with a family and never leave the house. And it'll be a war of the worlds happening. And I just said, you know what? That's not the correct way to motivate this movie. That is the feeling that I want to get, is the claustrophobia of the house. But don't be so restrained, because I think that organic ideas won't come that way. How can you maintain that spirit and still keep the movie alive? And so I said, you know, let me do this town sequence where they go to town just for in the first act of the movie. They all go to town to try to get their minds off of this weird stuff that's happening. And so it was such a wonderful way to kind of go to town and then have these people separate, and we learn backstory on all of them.
Do you have any books on extraterrestrials?
I am not a reverend anymore.
You've got 2 minor league home run records, don't you?
5.
It's contaminated.
Carl, there's something wrong with our water.
And then they come back together and we're back to the plot of the crop circles and what does it mean.
What if it's catching a signal from them?
There's always one scene that I write in my screenplays that has a lot of parts to it, and it's often cut out of my movies. And from the moment I wrote the baby monitor scene was like, this is the scene that's going to get cut out of the movie. What can I do to make sure in advance that it doesn't get cut out? Mel, when he takes the baby monitor, put your hand down, and then say, Morgan, I say, get down.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Are we rolling? And of course, when we went to shoot it, we had all kinds of problems. And then you're listening to the sounds. Now you start to slowly look over at your dad's hand, who's holding the monitor. I just couldn't get the tone right because it was a very complicated scene. Now go to the up position. Turn, turn, turn. And it really was 3 parts, you know, the interior of the car, the standing outside the car, so we were shooting through the doors, and then on top of the car. It's so fragmented over such a long period of time that you can't tell if it's matching, if the flow is working. And it's a pivotal scene because it basically is the last moment that the family kind of enjoys this phenomenon in a fun way. And it was just a very tricky thing.
There's 2 of them talking.
you keep coming forward, though, it just kind of slows you. That's when you see the shadow. It's moving. Then you say hello.
Hello.
The pantry sequence was called our swing set because we built that set. And whenever we lost the kids, you know, when I say we lost the kids, it means we only have a certain amount of time to shoot the kids. And if we run out of that time, that's it. By law, that's it. So they go home, and what are we going to do? Well, let's go to the swing set, and we go there and we shoot one shot of the pantry scene. And so we shot that over like 2-3 weeks, one shot at a time. So when you lean in, it's just frustration. You can't see enough. I'm going to do another shot into the door where I see you kind of searching, you can't see it, and then come up, trying to figure this out. How can I get a look at what's in there without getting too close?
The police are here. I'm with them. I am a police officer.
In a comedic way, he's going to go and find out once and for all that this is not a hoax. I had him do this kind of very cheesy TV cop thing. You know, I said, go as cheesy as you can with the cop thing.
Just tell us your name and why you did it, and we'll give you the same deal we gave the others.
And he was just really having fun with that. You want to see, but you're going to go down. Don't step forward. You're just going to go down right where you are. You're too scared to move forward. He leans forward and he goes, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to put my face right up to the edge of the door. And he gets up and walks away. And there's a great sense of like, all right, now I've played with you, toyed with you on a string this whole time. Now, Mel, I want you to just come back and do everything you just did in 10 times the speed.
What you're about to see may disturb you.
Everybody look out the window until he calls me, ready? We had to shoot the Brazilian video, and then we had to shoot Joaquin watching the Brazilian video to make one scene. So there was actually 2 separate scenes there. And the Brazilian video, I knew I wanted it all one shot, so it would look authentic, no cuts and stuff like that. Handheld, and Joaquin just kind of watching it from his closet. And now you see it for the first time, but you don't really see it.
Move, children! Dominoes!
I'm so glad it came out the way I had hoped it would, you know, with the electricity of the kids screaming. And I remember when we did Joaquin's side of it, he was doing these amazing reactions here. And then I said, you know, in the last one I said, end up in the coats. He's like, what? And I said, I want you to be in the coats at the end. And he backed up into the coats, and then he watched, and he goes, and, you know, and then grabbed the chair and came forward and all, and I was like, that is definitely in the movie. And when we finished, I was like, check the gate, that's definitely in the movie.
What's the matter?
There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?
Ready? Settle there in the background. Action! Go now. This is my first journey with CGI, and it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal because literally you have an entirely new job to do while you're making the movie with CGI, and I didn't realize how much the process needed me to have a vision in advance for that crew, and it was definitely a big learning process because it took twice as long, took twice as many people, took twice as much effort as we had originally planned on. And as hands-on as I am with the music, with the screenplay, obviously, with the actors, I mean, literally, you have to do that and go through that process with this huge crew that's doing the special effects. So let's start with the creature itself.
Yeah, we got some new stuff.
Whoa.
When Knight came up with the idea, the presence, I'll call it, in this movie, we talked a long time, all of us, about just exactly what that would be and what people would see and what the audience would think they would see. Knight does a very interesting thing in the style of the way he shoots movies. By creating a sense of suspense, he sits on long shots with a great deal of confidence and patience, and he wants the audience to begin to sit in their seat and move forward. He wants you to wonder what you're looking at. It should be very subliminal. You should almost turn to the person sitting next to you and say, what was that? The restraint that Knight has in his storytelling and what he chooses to show you is definitely Hitchcockian. The whole idea that the imagination can give you so much more than anything that you necessarily put in front of somebody. and waiting as long as possible to show the audience creates a much more suspenseful, thrilling kind of scene.
Traditionally, when you're setting out to create a monster for a movie, what you do is you come up with a broad palette of options. And so we had our art directors present tonight very diverse choices to sort of hone in on what he was thinking it should look like, how human should it be. The script gave us some indications, but when Knight started to see a look that he preferred, he would steer us in that direction, and then we would continue to refine that look. Although I have to say it was up through the entire production and into post-production, we were constantly fine-tuning the look of the creature. I think as the scenes were evolving editorially, Knight was getting a clearer view of what he wanted from the alien. Knight's original vision of the creature was slightly more feminine and more graceful. And originally, a woman was brought in and various video and other measurements were taken of her performance to try and create the foundation for how our creature was going to behave. When the creature performed the exact same motions and was superimposed into the scene, I think that everyone felt that the sense of threat was somehow diminished. And so the second phase of the evolution of that creature was for us to, without changing the basic idea, make it feel like it was more of a threatening presence. Initially, the concept of the creature's camouflaging ability was very similar to that we've seen perhaps in other movies where the entire creature could render itself invisible. When we created that look on film as sort of a preview image, I think that Knight felt it was too science fiction-y, too movie magic trick photography. And the movie is very much about the emotions and the reality of this family, and to put in something that would take the audience out of that sequence by making them notice the fancy visual effects was a mistake. So after a lot of trial and error, we came up with basically a slight revision to the character, which was that it did have this camouflaging ability, but only in that the pattern or the texture of its skin would change color. It doesn't disappear, but it's just harder to see.
Scream! Cut. Really great.
The scene in which the creature turns, and we see the image of the girl's face on its back, is the original photography from the set, and Rory's being suspended on wires on the set. The creature shop here at ILM created an animatronic hand. This was used in two sequences that also involved visual effects. One was in the pantry sequence, when Mel is looking under the door of the pantry and this hand sort of rushes out. Because it was an animatronic hand, we filmed it rushing out from under the door on the set, but then we wanted to actually show that its fingers were being cut off. So halfway through the scene, we transitioned to our computer-generated hand. Looks exactly the same, the audience can't tell the difference, but now a computer-generated knife can come in and cut off the fingers. In the end sequence, when we actually see that the alien is holding Rory Culkin, it felt more realistic to use the hand, and since that was working, why should we change it? So what we did is we put in the rest of the creature from the elbow on back is all computer generated. That was filmed here at ILM on a blue screen stage, and the reason for that was by this point in the evolution of the scene, we knew that we wanted the creature to be a little bit more frightening, a little bit more kind of wild, almost like a crazed drug addict has come into your house. And so we dressed up a very big, very strong actor in a blue outfit and had him do the performance that Knight was looking for. And then the boy was put into the background scene already filmed, and instead of our big blue actor, we put in our creature. The creature in the movie is only seen briefly, but has to be completely identifiable to the audience exactly what its intentions are by its behavior. If you look at all the other performances and scenes from the human actors, they've all got a specific style to what they're doing, and I think the challenge in this film was for us to make our synthetic character follow that same type of performance. One of the most difficult points to get across in a very quick amount of time was the fact that the one weakness, the Achilles heel to this alien, was that it could not stand water on it. And so we looked at a lot of various chemicals, acids, what peroxide does, and we found that there was a foaming quality to the acids as they ate into the materials, and that this would be a great visual cue for us to incorporate in the event so that the audience would understand that it's not just that it doesn't like water, it doesn't like getting wet, this is actually damaging the creature. And then, of course, revealing what we call the meat-looking part of the creature, the muscles underneath the skin, it was very clear that this was very damaging to the creature. The creature is memorable in this film because it's so well dramatically supported. I think that's the difference. You can have the best looking, the best designed creature in a movie. If it's not supported by the story, if it's not important to the movie, it's very forgettable. In this film, the entire tapestry of the story is woven around these culminating events, and I think that the juxtaposition of this fantastic creature in the family house threatening the child is a very memorable sequence.
We're at the last 5 weeks of making this movie. I just finished locking the movie just a few days ago, and I flew out here to Los Angeles to do the score here with the full orchestra with James Newton Howard. And it's really a beautiful end to the process of filmmaking because it's basically 100 people playing the musical emotion that you've decided on, and it's a very powerful thing. This whole process of a year and a half of making it from the time I wrote it, they're finally doing the last voices of it, and it's a big deal to be there at the last moment. First of all, I feel like, music is used way too much in movies as a crutch, as a band-aid, as I believe that editing is used as a band-aid to cover up poor storytelling. So, to avoid both those things, I cut as little as possible to hold myself to those kind of things. I mean, if they can just give that like 5% more emotion, you know, in playing this.
That's right.
I don't know how to get that.
Well, they just... Right. I think if we just do it again, and they'll get it right. It's really one of those things you just get.
Just say 5% more love. Every single movie, the last 3 movies, there's been a moment where I go, we're not going to score this movie. Don't score the horror part of this movie at all. And only score the flashback out to the Meryl Epiphany, all the Epiphany stuff, But my process always starts that way. We're not going to have any music in this movie, all right, James? Just don't worry about it. And then James understands the story so well, the story that we're telling. I come in and I say, well, what would you do here?
There's always an enormous advantage to working with somebody more than once, provided it's a good relationship to start with. And when Knight and I first met on The Sixth Sense, he felt that the music really didn't have a singular life of its own beyond the movie. But by the time we got into Unbreakable, we had become friends to an extent, so the rapport was more complete, it was easier. And we started an idea, which we followed through with Signs, where having storyboarded the movie for me, I then returned to Los Angeles and wrote music before he started shooting the movie.
I gave him the screenplay, and I brought him down to Philadelphia, and I brought the music editor down, and I walked them through the movie. I literally talked them through the movie. I said, okay, the movie opens like this, and I showed them the drawings, all the storyboards, and I literally performed the movie for however it took me, like an hour and a half.
The main title that you see over the opening of the movie was written before the movie was ever shot, and it's based on a 3-note motif. And that motif is reprised throughout the movie in all kinds of benevolent, hostile, threatening, mysterious kinds of ways. It was not specifically written to be the main title. In fact, when we first listened to it, evaluated it, we wondered if in fact there was anywhere in the movie for this music to exist, although we both thought it was somehow related. And I think it was kind of a stroke of genius because it starts the movie off in such a mind-blowing way, and just the level of intensity, it's very unexpected. What it does is it sets up a context of expectations. So you know that what you're listening to in the main title is going to happen sometime in the movie. You just don't know where, and you don't know quite how. It informs people about what they're about to see.
I said, James, everything's going to come from that. Then he didn't write anything for a long time. He went away and he actually did another movie. And then I went and shot the movie and edited the movie. And then once I gave up that thing of, there's going to be no music, I came to James and I said, all right, what would you do? So then he started pulling things from that 2.5 minutes and elaborating on it.
Corten. ¿Te quedaste con ganas de ver más cine? No te preocupes. Videoclub M&M, desde 1986, te ofrece todas las novedades y los títulos difíciles de conseguir. Acércate a Vicente López, 2983, Villa Ballester. Teléfono 4738-2041.